Ghost of Yotei is one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. Every frame looks like a painting, every fight feels grounded, and in a year full of sequels and remakes, this one stands tall. But here's the thing, you probably won't finish it. And I don't mean that as an insult to you, and it's not that Yotei isn't good, it's honestly not even necessarily a bad thing, because games aren't meant to be rushed through and beaten. You should live in the world, feel the wind, experience the fights, and lose yourself in the silence between them. Still, the data tells a different story. Since Yotei just released, we don't have enough data yet to see how far players get, so instead I'll look at its predecessor, Ghost of Tsushima. And what I found was a familiar pattern. Out of every 100 players, only about a third ever finished the main story. This shows how vast these open world games are, and somewhere between main story and exploration, most players drift away. When I plotted completion data from how long to beat, Tsushima fell right in line with other open world sequels, The Witcher 3, Red Dead 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, the list goes on. They all start with millions of players and end with just a few 100,000 seeing the credits. I call that the beautiful trap. Open world games like Yotei and Tsushima give you everything at once: freedom, beauty, discovery, an entire world waiting for you. Listen, I know you'll feel this. At the beginning, you promise you'll stay focused. You might still do the side missions, but you won't let it drag you from the main story. But the moment you step into the world, you see vendors selling maps, bounties that need to be paid, and animals that need to be followed, and you start becoming the main character. Atsu wouldn't just leave this poor man stranded, or these wolves caged up. I mean, my main character would, but she definitely wouldn't leave the bounty unpaid. Then all of a sudden you spend hours into side quests, upgrades, and the photo mode. That's what the data really shows, not necessarily failure to finish, but a fascination with the world. And that fascination is fascinating to me, honestly, because the reason that people don't finish Tsushima and why they might not finish Yotei is the same reason we fell for these games in the first place. If you look at Tsushima's achievement data, you can actually see where players start dropping off. So for the first achievement, it's Gathering Storm. This happens during the prologue, and it's when you recover the katana of the Sakai clan. About 93% of players got to it, so if you start the game, more than likely you got this far. Next, you got the Point of No Return achievement. This is where you pretty much become the ghost and you go against your code. Still, about 84% of people make it this far, and so on and so forth. Now once you beat the game, you get the Mono no Aware trophy. Spoiler for Ghost of Tsushima, but this is where you either revert back to your old self or become the ghost forever, in so many words. Only about 36% of people make it this far, and obviously even fewer than that get the other Liberate Completion level achievements. Looking at it in this funnel chart shows the full cycle of a player. The initial excitement all the way to the quiet fade out once the world either becomes monotonous or you finish what you wanted to accomplish in the first place. And again, not finishing is not a bad thing. Open world games give players so much freedom that finishing low-key becomes optional. For a lot of people, just experiencing the world is enough. Honestly, what's funny is that even though only 36% of people finish the game, that's not really a problem. It's surprisingly pretty positive, because when I scraped all the reviews from Steam, most of the reviews painted Tsushima in a good light, no matter how much time they spent in the game. Thousands of reviews calling it an absolute masterpiece, cinematic, or just simply a great game, and yet most of those same players never even finished the main story. But that's a modern open world experience. Games like Ghost of Tsushima and Yotei are about soaking in the atmosphere. You can spend hours doing side quests, which might I add they heavily improved on from Tsushima. These worlds feel so alive that finishing them almost feels besides the point. And personally, I think that with games today, we've hit a point where the value of a game isn't only measured in hours played or completion percentages, it's mostly in how much time you wanted to spend there. I mean, listen, in the first couple of hours of Yotei, all I did was bounty hunt, because the duels are challenging and a lot of fun. And the same goes for other open world games too, like Red Dead, Witcher, and even Elden Ring. You'll see a lot of people say they've never finished it, but it's one of the best games they've ever played. Honestly, to me, that sentence used to sound strange. Like, how can you even know it's your favorite game if you've never finished it? But with open world games, you kind of have to look at things in a different context, a different perspective. And Yotei succeeds at making the world feel alive a lot better than games in the past used to. Every time you ride through the fields, something always comes up, and it's not just a simple fetch quest anymore. I mean, yeah, it's still mostly go here and fight these guys, but the actual stories feel real. I remember getting a quest of how someone who has a gambling addiction and owed someone money went on the run, and the shop owner wanted me to go check on him because he didn't want him to get killed. And then I meet the guy and he's talking about, if you help me, I'll give you some armor. Of course, it's never that simple, but I'll let you figure that part out. I'm saying all this to say that times have changed and maybe finishing a game isn't the right way to measure the experience anymore. Alright, so up until this point, we looked at the data on how far people get, how long they play, and how many people finish. but it isn't always strictly about numbers. So while pulling the reviews, I've also pulled every adjective from those reviews to see what players are actually saying, and I created a word cloud of the top 50 most used adjectives. And I'm telling you, some of these surprised me. So we have words like beautiful, amazing, good, immersive, and cinematic. Those make sense, right? They describe the world, the art, the story, and the experience of the game. Cool. Then you have a couple of negative words that make sense as well, with repetitive, boring, and bad. I mean, I felt that way when I was doing those boring, can you get me these things type of side quests. Cool again. But then you have the word political, used 538 times. Interesting. And as I'm looking through the list of adjectives in different reviews, I realized that not all of these really describe the game itself, but some of the discourse around the game. Now, I'm not going to go in depth about what happened, but it's interesting to see that there are a few reviewers who, although enjoyed the game and played at least 24 hours of the game, have left reviews referencing things that happened outside the game, like developer comments and political and social issues that had nothing to do with the story or the design at all. And that's really what I found interesting about this chart. You can literally see how outside conversations and real-world opinions bleed into how people talk about the game online. Still, if you look at the big picture, the dominant language is overwhelmingly positive, and the story is mostly what people are focusing on. And I think that's the bigger takeaway, that despite all the outside noise of the game, what players actually connect with is still the experience itself, the story, the world, and the atmosphere. And honestly, that's what makes these games special, because once you're in them, all that outside noise fades away. Alright, so how is Yotei? Well, I'm 13 hours in, so obviously this isn't a real review, but more of like an impressions review type of thing. So off rip, this is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. The colors are very vibrant, and you can tell how much care the devs put into it. Me personally, I'm never someone who uses photo mode, and I never understood when devs would add that as a DLC because it never really called to me, but this is one of the first games where photo mode was actually enticing. Also, I did the Takashi mic mode, and it's brutal in the best way possible. It's a little over the top when the blood is gushing, but it's also very entertaining at the same time. Also, I don't know if this happened in Tsushima and I just didn't notice it, but when Atsu cleans off her katana, the blood actually sticks to surfaces. I accidentally discovered this after finishing a bounty and the blood stuck to the wall. I was amazed. And speaking of realism, the audio engineers deserve raises too because the sound design is incredible. I remember going to a new section in the map and just watching someone play on a jar harp, I think it was called. Either way, the animations weren't perfect, but the sound pulled me in. I literally stopped what I was doing just to listen. Adding these small features make the world feel lived in, and it's one of my favorite aspects of gaming, and Sucker Punch did not let me down with this one. On to combat. Now the combat is very similar to Tsushima to no surprise, but the fights hit a lot harder if that makes sense. In Tsushima, the combat always reminded me of the Batman Arkham games, which I love, but the duels are something I wanted a lot more of. I remember wishing there was a one-on-one mode, either in multiplayer, or they added a roguelike mode just where I could fight rounds of straight duels. Well, while there's no specific mode, Yotei delivers the duels in spades. There are so many times when you're fighting and that red health bar pops up at the top and you know it's about to get serious. Honestly, in the 13 hours of gameplay I have, most of it is tracking down bounties just because I know it's going to be more difficult, and it feels like a game of cat and mouse. Also, most of these bounties have some sort of story to them, which adds to the enjoyment because it isn't just a simple go here and kill this person. Sometimes you have to search for clues, fight other people, and ask for information, or just kill your way to the person. Each one of these is unique, and I can appreciate how much work was put into each interaction. They also added a new gambling game called Zeni Hajiki. If you don't know, I made a whole video on gambling mini games that you could check out right here. But there's yet another game which is a good chance to slow down from all the killing, just to take people's money. I can never be mad at that. So I'm not too deep into the story yet, but from what I get, it's a pretty straightforward revenge story, nothing too crazy. I'm already hooked on the gameplay a lot more than Tsushima, which is even bigger shock to me. I thought I would have missed the different stances, but the variety of weapons is nice too. I usually just stick to the dual blades though, but the options are nice. So yeah, those are my impressions. Yotei feels like everything I wanted Tsushima to be. It's a great sequel, much more refined, and it rewards you for taking your time. If the story keeps its pace, this might end up being one of my favorite games of the year, even if I don't finish it. You like how I brought it full circle there? So after looking at the data, the reviews, and my experience, I think it's safe to say you probably won't finish Ghost of Yotei. And like I said at the beginning, that is okay. Games have different purposes, and some games, especially open world ones, are just meant to be experienced and explored, and I personally think Yotei is one of those games. How far did you get into Ghost of Yotei? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you want a deeper dive into the data, I have a link to the dashboard in the description down below. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you later.